Thank you very much. One, standing way up here from everybody, sort of like maybe we could jump down here, but I'm not going to do that. When I hear in my bio that I started this job in 1991, I always think, well, I must not have been able to get another job. And some of the audiences I now speak to, I'm not sure half the room was even into the workplace or even born in some occasions, so that always takes me back in that regard. The IMA, just as a brief commercial has said, the statewide trade association representing manufacturers, have been around for quite a while. 1893 is when we got started. There were 5 manufacturers in Chicago who got upset at something going on in Springfield at the time. Imagine that. And they figured they ought to get together and go down to Springfield and start doing some lobbying. And so we have been an active trade organization representing manufacturers of all across the spectrum. And so it's a very interesting job. It's a fascinating job in getting to visit with the folks who make things in this country. And in Illinois, we have a wide variety of people who do that. I was commenting about the fact that a factory facility up in Rockford, folks, we made a part that is on the Mars rover, and that we did a story for our magazine. I think I saw somebody had one of our magazines here about that organization and how proud they were at the time when they concluded that particular piece that was going to be utilized in the gears of the wheels that are on that facility, that the employees of the company, which are only about 75 people who work for it, were all going to be able to touch that piece and put their DNA on that piece of equipment that today is on that planet doing the kind of research that's there. That's the kind of fun things and interesting things that I get to see, been getting to travel around the state. And it also highlights really much of what we're going to talk about today. It's also 5 o'clock. I understand I'm either standing between dinner or a cocktail, so I'm not going to talk for a long time, but there are some things that I want to make a point of today, and I'll start with some statistics just so that we put into context exactly how important manufacturing is to this country. It contributes $2.17 trillion to the U.S. economy. An estimated 18.5 million jobs, and in the state of Illinois, where I represent, nearly 600,000 people work directly for manufacturers. Manufacturers in the United States perform more than 3/4 of all private sector research and development in this country, and driving more innovation in the manufacturing sector than any other sector in our economy. Overall, manufacturing industry expansion and productivity has increased 250% in just the last 30 years. It shows what amazing things are going on behind the walls of facilities around the country. Today, I'd like to outline some of the challenges facing manufacturers, but also some solutions that I think we ought to be talking about. We are, as manufacturers, people who make things. We solve problems. So today, let's look at some of the challenges that manufacturers face and must be taking on as we look to the years ahead. I'll state at the very beginning that if there is just one point of things that you remember from my speech today, it is this. Manufacturing has done more to move people out of poverty and in the middle class than any and all of the government programs combined in this country, and I would dare say around the world. Manufacturing has helped generations of workers build wealth, educate their children, purchase homes, generally enrich society. It can move people out of ghettos and terrible economic circumstances into middle-class neighborhoods. Each challenge we face, though, must be met head-on, because this nation needs a vibrant manufacturing sector. It is core to the growth of our economy as a country. Now, we all know how the face of manufacturing has changed, and how it has changed from the days of when it was viewed as a dark and potentially dangerous place to make a living. For today's workforce, the level of knowledge and skills needed to be successful in the modern manufacturing world would be daunting to even some of our most recent generations. Yet graduates from our secondary and post-secondary schools that are entering the workforce, many are lacking in the math, science, technology, and even the ability to effectively communicate. The ability to send a tweet doesn't do much when you're being asked to write code for a CNC machine. Manufacturing careers have become more technologically savvy, requiring more training, and if our industry is to adapt to the digital needs that are going on in the manufacturing facility, much more effort has to be done in training. 2 million manufacturing jobs in this country are likely to be left empty over the next 10 years due to the widening skills gap. And our friends at the National Association of Manufacturers estimate that on any given week, more than 350,000 manufacturing jobs go vacant in this country. It's not because of a lack of applicants. It is because, as many of you know, the quality of the applicants that are walking through the door. The days of making a living in manufacturing by the sweat of our brow has been replaced by the application of our intellect. The driving force in manufacturing work is skill, precision, economy, and quality. Manufacturing has advanced through technology, and the careers in this sector pay well. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the average manufacturing employee in the state of Illinois earns $18,000 more each year in salary and benefits than any other on the average of other sectors. Yet in Illinois, manufacturing jobs remain unfilled, largely again to the skills gap that I've mentioned. According to experts, the average employer, that's just not confined to manufacturing, the average employer will replace about 5% of its workforce every year through 2027 due to retirement. Every day, 10,000 baby boomers right now are hitting the age of 65. I joined that group just a week ago, by the way. The challenge that places in front of Illinois manufacturers means that we have to replace upwards of 25,000 employees and production workers and 5,000 engineers each and every year just to stay up to speed. Now, while some of us may differ in what we believe the business of education is about, but the education system of our country and our state is about producing a product that employers need to have. And frankly, that product has been wanting. STEM education is as critical as developing work ethic, and both are mandatory in producing the results that we want. Our education system needs to implement curriculum that will prepare students to meet the needs and wants of you, the employers. And we take an active role in creating a comprehensive program of study. We have a system that will direct and address our local needs. We must continue our work to integrate industry-recognized credentialing programs into secondary and post-secondary environments. And we must work together to support more initiatives that involve fast-tracking workforce development. Many states have done this successfully, including Illinois, where we recently completed a pilot project known as the Accelerated Training for Illinois Manufacturing, where 600 long-term workers were assessed for skills they already possessed and then trained to close each of the individual skills gap. The result was that working with our workforce and education partners, we have returned people to payrolls far more quickly. In terms of credentialing, over the last 4 years, more than 10,000 men and women in Illinois have earned industry certificates, as well as college degrees in manufacturing programs of study. We know that specific skill training in manufacturing can begin as early as the 10th grade. And many of our high schools and our community colleges now offer dual credit for students that are going through the transition to make their careers advance. Another area is apprenticeships. Across the country, there is a call to recreate and expand apprenticeships in multiple careers. The IMA's Education Foundation, our 501c3, leads a consortium of community colleges and employer associations in developing apprenticeships based on the European dual system of instruction. While building the system has been slow nationally, we expect to have around 600 apprentices by the end of 2020. of highly skilled occupations for manufacturers. Most all of the states that may have been represented here today are also part of this federal program and should be commended for the work that we are doing there. We are expanding the list of occupations for apprenticeships and calling for greater use of work-study programs to enable the job challenges of all ages to acquire skills which bringing home a paycheck will mean something. We want to see more public-private partnerships being developed, and it will take employers to be directly involved in this program if we are to be successful. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say that we must enlist our elected officials. Many times we want to stand in meetings like this and beat them up about what they have and have not been doing. But without their help and without government support, we will not be successful in this area. We must be willing to collaborate with educational institutions, our workforce boards in our local communities to develop policies to create a system that will meet your local needs. The economies of Rock Island and the Quad Cities differs greatly from that in Southern Illinois or in the Chicagoland area. So local input in being able to develop these programs are terribly, terribly important. Now let me hit upon a couple of hot button issues. Immigration, for one. No matter what side of this argument you personally may fall on in the area of immigration, I think that we can all agree with one thing. What we have now is not working terribly well. One thing that hasn't changed in the field of manufacturing over the past century is the importance of immigration and immigrant workers in our various industries. For generations, immigrants found the path to the American dream through employers. Many became true craftsmen and able to live out the American dream and develop those skills and took great pride in their work. American manufacturing companies, large and small, have been calling for action on immigration for years. And at the end of the day, we need policies to keep our economy growing, our borders strong, and reward businesses who play by the rules. A recent report from Pew Research said that without allowing further immigration activity, that the totals of the U.S. workforce would fall from 173 million in 2015, the latest statistics available, to an estimated 165 million in 2035. U.S.-born workers who currently make up 74% of the workforce will drop to just 66%, predominantly due to that aging problem of the baby boomers that are aging out of the workforce at an alarming rate. And many of those baby boomers that are retiring from manufacturing careers spent decades with one company or in one industry, honing their skills and accumulating knowledge that will be lost if we don't find ways to broaden the employee pool. Businesses work best in a competitive environment where most of the innovative ideas thrive. And widening our pool of workers to include skilled immigrants will actually save jobs in the long run. 2, trade. For some time, and certainly during this last election cycle, free trade, or the notion of trade, became a very hot-button issue. This presidential election highlighted concerns about trade policies that most people would not give a second thought to. But international trade and competing in global marketplace is imperative to the health of our economy, and especially here in the Midwest. The U.S. Department of Commerce estimates that for every $1 billion in exports, 6,250 manufacturing jobs are created in the United States. And without this, we cannot be successful in the global marketplace. The ability of our American-made products to be sold to a foreign nation due to fair trade policy is making a difference. A key component of any policy designed to return America to strong economic and growth and job creation will be necessary to forge strong trade agreements. And be reminded that our two most important trading partners here in the Midwest and in Illinois in particular are our friends to the north in Canada and to our friends in the south in Mexico. that trade in this part of the world is oriented on a north-south axis. The American brand still means something overseas. You can't travel around the world without seeing the pride that people take in American influence of their products. We need to capitalize on that and continue to lead in the area of trade policy. And now let's go to an issue that we can all maybe more agree upon: taxes and regulatory burden. Between taxes and regulations, there is anywhere between a 12 and 25% cost differential for manufacturers in the United States when they are to compete with their competitors around the world. We must see, and this administration's pledge to do this is something that has to be followed through on, but we must see tax and regulatory reform from this Congress. Tax hikes and increased regulation has and is crippling manufacturing companies' ability to grow. I've never ceased to amaze at how the ruling class of politicians who claim to love middle-class jobs and creation of jobs, but want to hamper the people who actually do create them by making it tougher to be able to compete, whether in the United States or around the world. The regulatory burdens that we are navigating through are threatening our ability to forecast. If we can't properly plan, we will not be successful. Companies must continue to be innovative in order to survive, but government must also recognize these challenges that manufacturers and other businesses are experiencing, and to do what they can to create an atmosphere where industry can prosper with fewer and less onerous regulations. Not calling for things to be thrown out the window, but calling for them to think about the way these kinds of new regulatory burdens can hamper our growth. In the area of taxes, the United States, as we all know, has the highest corporate tax rate among any of the industrialized nations. I saw an alert on my phone this afternoon that the President will be announcing a call for a 15% corporate tax in his tax legislation that is going to be proposed. That is the kind of thing, whether or not it can pass, can send confidence throughout our community, and something that can be supportive, and hopefully the Congress will listen. As I said at the start of my speech, that if there was one thing that we wanted to remember about today's remarks, is what manufacturing has done for the growth of the middle class in this country. So while the generalized area of concentration that we need to address to fix the problems that we face, it really is about how we can grow the vast center of our economy. The truth is that manufacturing in particular, business in general, creates opportunity. It supports our neighborhoods and our charities. True, making things has changed dramatically over the past decade or so, but the provide and production remains the same for people who are involved in manufacturing. When I go on a typical plant tour and I ask people who are working on the line about their particular activity and what they're doing, it is always with the same great pride that they describe it. It is a profession that is professionally satisfying, and it is for rooms like this to start making sure that the next generation of employees know that, given the opportunity to see what goes on behind those walls of those manufacturing facilities that you may drive by week in and week out. I commented on a story before I came up here about a healthcare manufacturer in southern Illinois that we visited. And we had plans to meet with the local newspaper, and so we invited them to come with us on the tour of the facility. It was literally 1.5 miles from the newspaper offices. We had the conversation, we talked about what was going on there. 450 people being employed in this particular facility just north of Carbondale, Illinois. As we walked out that day, the newspaper editor thanked us for what we had done in providing to open up, and it said, "You know, I never really knew what you made here." A sad commentary on not being able to make sure that we tell the community and that the community knows what we are doing. For decades, manufacturers have been the best producers of middle-class jobs in the nation. People from all walks of life looked to manufacturing for jobs that paid good wages, offered health insurance, built pension benefits for retirement. People who worked for manufacturers were the heart of the middle class, and with the continued innovation and technological advancements that have been catapulting our industry to new heights, it is the type of wealth can be the resurgence of the vast middle class of this country. Many of the people who lack skills or training to enter advanced manufacturing workforce have to resort to whatever is available, all too often minimum wage positions, a job designed mainly to be entry-level or temporary. However, what we see on the news and is talked about more broadly than what we do, it's $75,000 a year jobs, are things like the fight for 15. That's a catchy phrase. Well, a fight for 15 gets you a $31,000 a year job, and on the most part doesn't provide the benefits. So the politicians and the leaders who talk about those concerns ought to be more worried about trying to create the jobs that we foster in this country and not those that our friends in the service sector do. For decades, the United States has carried a proud manufacturing legacy. America is better positioned than any other country in the world to usher in a new era of invention, discovery, and production. Manufacturers are at their best when it comes to adapting to changing technologies and to produce productivity gains, which is easily seen by the statistics cited earlier. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to come by today to be able to talk about this. It's very, very important. It's important because you are really the people who can be the folks that are out there on the front lines making sure that this next generation of employees know how important and the opportunities that are available in the manufacturing sector. We operate in a wonderful part of the country, the heartland of America where manufacturing has built this country. And so I applaud you for taking your time today to learn the various kinds of things that you've discussed. And I hope that if you remember one thing, as I said earlier, manufacturing has done more to take people out of poverty than any government program devised yet. If we remember that, this country will be on a growth pattern that will not be stopped. Thank you.